This is my review for Lair of the Clockwork God for Nintendo Switch. It's a unique game because you have two playable characters and you can toggle between Dan and Ben. And Ben is a point and click. He walks everywhere. He cannot jump. He cannot run. He cannot lift things. He can interact with objects. He cannot push the big blocky ones, but he can interact with objects. And he has an inventory of items that he can use. He can pick up items, he can combine items, and then he can use the items on things. Whereas Dan is a little bit more of a platformer. He can run, he can jump, he can push the heavy blocks, and you need to kind of use them both in tandem to help them both navigate the treacherous terrain of the maps. It's a good game in theory, and it moves a little slow because of the way Ben moves in particular. He cannot run, he cannot jump, he just kind of has to walk slowly. And there's a lot of kind of verbose dialogue between the two because they're friends. They kind of heckle each other, give each other a hard time. There is a setting in the settings option to bring their dialogue down a little bit, and then there's a setting to bring their dialogue all the way down to critical only, so that if you get tired of kind of that friendly banter and you want less story, more game, you can do that. So that's a nice option to have in the settings. But overall, it's two types of games at once: point and click adventure with combining items and using items to solve puzzles, but it's also kind of a jumpy platformer. Where you have to acquire items to help you do things like double jump and things like that. So overall, graphics-wise, let's go ahead and it's a pixel art, but it's kind of a flat pixel art. It doesn't have a very high color depth. It's not exactly 8-bit or anything. It still feels very 16-bit, but kind of a lazy 16-bit, if you know what I mean. So I'm thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of like a 5. I'm gonna stick with maybe a 4. Actually, I'm gonna go to a 4 because there was a lot of times I got clipped into items. I would jump as Dan. I could jump, and then when I would land, I would fall into the ground, and then my sprite would like shake and quiver there, and then pop up to the top. I didn't like that at all. The graphics were glitchy and weird, and in fact, I beat the second phase, and then it just locked me onto a loading screen and wouldn't load beyond that. Gameplay, I'm going to go ahead and give it something like a 6. I thought the gameplay was good and innovative, and I enjoyed some of the mechanics in there. There was definitely inspiration from other games, specifically like Celeste. I think there was some scenes in there where I found a lot of similarities between Lair of the Clockwork God and Celeste. As far as audio goes, I'm actually going to give this one a little bit higher. I'm going to give it like a 7. The music was really good. The beep speech wasn't exactly beep speech. It was kind of a mumble speech. It kind of sounded like they were talking backwards. But it wasn't, they didn't have to do it the entire time. They would do it like once, and then the dialogue and the text would just kind of continue. So it wasn't too annoying, but it was pretty good. Story, I didn't really get too far into the story. You've got two players, and they start off looking for a flower that cures cancer. The game is very self-aware. The game knows that it's a game. The guys that play it are game developers, and one guy is a platformer guy, and one guy is a point-and-click guy. And they know what they are. They're like, I'm not a platformer. I refuse to jump. I will never jump. I'm not a platformer. I am a puzzle guy. And they know that they're in a game. It's very self-aware, but it still kind of lacks substance. It feels hollow. You know what I mean? It's one of those parodies for parody's sake. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a 5. This gives this game a 5.5 out of 10. And if I have to round to a whole number, I'm probably rounding down. I was not impressed. For $15 in the eShop, this game should have been better. The graphics glitching, it should have been a little bit faster pace on the gameplay, and the story could have been a little bit more compelling. The audio was probably the best part. The music was fantastic, especially the intro credits music was just amazing. But the rest of the audio wasn't all that great. I feel like it could have been a little bit more intuitive. For 15 bucks in the eShop, definitely not worth it. $10 in the eShop, it's kind of a mix if you're really into that kind of thing. If it goes to $5 in the eShop, go ahead and pick it up. But there's no physical cartridge for this one available. So that pretty much sums it up. I'll give it a 5, 5.5.